Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, February 7th, 2020. Inherited Wealth and the Income Payroll Tax System. An article posted at accountingtoday.com by Ben Steverman entitled Americans to Inherit $764 billion this year, mostly tax-free, explains how inherited wealth is not taxed, and to correct this wrong in his opinion, he discusses a proposal to tax inheritances. Some of his points are: Americans are projected to inherit $764 billion this year and will pay an average tax of just 2.1% on that income. The estimated tax on work and savings is between 15.8% and 37%. New York University law professor Lily Batchelder is proposing that the existing estate tax be scrapped and replaced by levying income and payroll taxes on inheritance income. Ms. Batchelder's calculations predict that her tax would raise as much as $1.4 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, there are two main reasons why some in Congress are taking this proposal to tax inheritances seriously. Obviously, there's the idea that the proposal will generate more money for them to spend on programs they believe are important. And the second reason is the feeling that it's just not fair for some people to receive an inheritance while others don't. Therefore, the only right thing to do is for the government to take a significant portion of that inheritance income from those fortunate enough to be getting one and redistribute that money to the unfortunate ones who aren't. Now, believe it or not, there are problems with the proposals to tax inheritances. Even if you ignore the fairness issue, there are a number of reasons why this proposal is not as simple as it sounds. Among them, the people who have the most to lose under this proposal are wealthy people who are the ones that are most able to hire the best tax professionals to find ways to reduce or eliminate any taxes on their heirs. The proposed tax assumes that people will continue to robotically leave money to their heirs even when the government is taking up to 50% of it. Now, many inheritances are not in cash, but are in, for example, farmland or a business. In those cases, there would not be enough inherited cash to pay the tax, and the heir would have to sell the farm or the business in order to satisfy Uncle Sam. In order to administer and enforce this new tax, a new army of bureaucrats will need to be hired, and of course, taxpayers are not going to just sit idly by while their wealth is confiscated, so they will have to hire expensive tax professionals who claim to be experts in the area. Now let's look at the FAIRtax solution. First, let's consider, why do people earn money? Well, they earn it to spend it now, spend it later, or provide for their heirs, who will in turn either spend it or provide for their heirs. Why then are members of Congress not considering taxing the consumption of inherited wealth when that consumption occurs? Why would they prefer a complicated plan to tax inherited wealth under the income payroll tax system? Now, how many people do we know who received an inheritance, then went out and bought new cars or went on trips or spent the money on their children or grandkids? These expenditures, to the extent that they were on new goods and retail services, will be subject to the FAIRtax. So, with the FAIRtax, you won't need a new layer of bureaucracy or an army of tax professionals to effectively tax inheritance. So why is this solution not appealing to the ruling class and their minions in Congress and D.C.? Well, the ruling class loves these income tax proposals because the wealthy groups most affected will pay lots of money for benefits and exceptions. This is yet another way of controlling the wealthy, because if they don't obey, then their heirs will pay even more tax. And they know better, but they're happy to let the bureaucrats think that, if on paper anyway, a tax proposal raises a certain amount of tax revenue from a certain group, that the affected groups will not alter their behavior to try to reduce the amount of tax paid. In conclusion, In the discussion about taxing inheritances, much of the rhetoric goes to the fairness issue. Some of the commentators actually seem to be delighting in punishing those people who have deferred spending on themselves and have the audacity to provide money for their heirs to spend. If the purpose of a tax system is to fund the government and the programs that people want, there is no need to continually add layer after layer of complex rules imposing a great deal of difficulty on both the payer and the collector. Now, the dirty little secret is that there's a group of people in this country, encouraged by the ruling class, who always benefit from conflict. These people are constantly seeking to do things through the income payroll tax system that they would have a great deal of difficulty doing directly. For example, if we had the FAIRtax and one group wanted to confiscate a portion of someone else's inheritance, it would be much more difficult to do. All of us would know that if we allow inheritances to be confiscated, then what's to stop some of our other assets from being confiscated as well? Martin Niemöller was a Lutheran pastor living in Germany when Hitler came to power. When he saw the Nazi abuses, he became opposed to the Nazis, but only spoke out after World War II began. He was arrested and died at a concentration camp. The following statement was made by Pastor Niemöller after he was arrested. First, they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out then because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Pastor Niemöller's words should never be forgotten by freedom-loving Americans. We can still speak out, and there won't be Gestapo agents knocking on our door to drag us away to a concentration camp. However, if we don't speak out and demand the solution that benefits everyone, we're in danger of losing many more of our freedoms under the guise of taxation. It's time to demand the FAIRtax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.